Hello there, my name is David Pustansky and welcome to this review of the Evercade Worms Collection number 1. Now, if you haven't done so already, do take a moment to smash that subscribe button and also check out the websites XSTREAMED.tv and Geek Battle TV for all of your gaming, movies and other news and trivia and stuff. I don't know. Now, the Evercade seems to be going from strength to strength with its increasing library of retro game cartridge collections. The Worms collection brings a great collection of 3 games to the platform. They are Worms, Worms Armageddon and Worms Blast. And whilst 3 games on a cartridge makes it one of the smaller collections available for the system, this is still what I would call one of the essential Evercade games to get. For those who have never played Worms, it's a turn-based strategy game where you control a squad of 4 worms, who have to try to kill another squad of 4 worms. You can do this using a vast array of weapons and with its turn-based gameplay, where you have to control each of your worms as individuals in a set order, there is a ton of strategizing involved in deciding which enemy worm to target when and which weapons to use. The most standard of these weapons is the Bazooka, which when selected you can choose to aim from a stood position and control the firepower and speed of the shot. Hitting your target isn't guaranteed, as each level, which is randomly generated to be different every time, also features wind conditions which change continuously. This means you have to learn how to judge how much oomph you want to put into each shot to overcome the wind direction. As well as the bazooka, there are shotguns, grenade, oozes, and a range of other weapons which you may choose to use either for the most effect or just for the fun of taking a shotgun to a weakened opponent just to finish them off. Fatality. Truthfully, for the most part, the bazooka will be your go-to weapon with the longest range to fire, and it also does a lot of damage, more so than most other weapons in the game. You get unlimited amounts of ammo for some of the weapons, but then there are some attacks which you only get a couple of chances to use, and so you're more likely to save them back until the right moment. This includes homing missiles, which basically are the same as the bazooka, but you can choose exactly where you want to hit. There is also the airstrike, which drops a few big bombs over a decently wide area. This is perfect if your enemy worms are at a long distance away on the battlefield. And then there are the sheep bomb. The classic from the Worm series is a sheep which you release and it jumps and bounds across the screen going ba ba ba, and then you press a button and it explodes. Because obviously. Now, it's weird and wacky stuff like this which gives the game Worms its personality, and I love it. Now, beyond these kind of weapons, you also get some other items that you can use, including a pneumatic drill and blowtorch, which allows you to burrow into the scenery. This is great for creating safe spaces to hide in, or to tunnel towards an enemy without them being able to attack you. This doesn't allow you to do sneak attacks, however, as they can see your position the whole time, just as you can see theirs. Then, of course, there is the teleport item, which allows you to beam up Star Trek style and land somewhere else on the screen. This has to be used carefully, as using any non-attacking item means that you essentially skip a go in terms of doing damage to the opponent. And this is where the extra layer of strategy comes in. Do you attack? Do you teleport? Do you burrow? Anytime you don't attack, it gives a potential advantage to your opponent. Now, pretty much all of what I've described here applies to both Worms and Worms Armageddon in this collection. And whilst it's not currently known if there are any plans for an Evercade Worms Collection number 2, it's an interesting selection of games that they have here. They've included Worms rather than Worms Director's Cut, but that's probably due to these are console ports, whereas Worms Director's Cut was originally only for the Amiga, and that would be harder to put it across onto the Evercade. It's also interesting that we then get Worms Armageddon, which is basically the director's cut of Worms 2. So there could be a future Worms Collection 2, which could give us the better version of Worms 1 and the worse version of Worms 2. The third game in the collection is Worms Blast, which is an entirely different kettle of fish to the other 2 games, and we'll get back to that a little later on in the review. The original Worms, which is included here, appears to be from the Sega Mega Drive version, or Genesis if that's what you call the Mega Drive. I say Mega Drive. It's played with 3 buttons, so it makes me think it is a Mega Drive port, and truthfully this is the first time I've played Worms with a gamepad rather than playing it with a mouse, because I originally had the original Worms on the Amiga 1200 and in more recent years have continued to play it on the PC. It took me a bunch of tries to get used to these controls, and I say that because it has a weird setup where the same button that brings up the weapons menu first brings up the option where you can press the wrong thing and it quits the game, and this was a bit annoying. The original Worms game has graphics that feel very much like it's an Amiga era classic game like Lemmings. Each worm has just a few pixels, and in many ways this game will appeal to fans of Lemmings, as it's a bunch of critters who can use skills selected from a menu in the same fashion that you do on Lemmings. The major differences are that in Lemmings you're trying to save as many of the critters as possible, but in Worms you're trying to kill them. And also that in Lemmings you will have them continually walk around the screen, but on Worms they will stay put until controlled individually. Worms Armageddon is an evolution of Worms 2 and has stylised graphics, which I can understand them doing to make the worms have more personality and be better for merchandising. But to me, it's never had quite the same charm as the original versions in Worms 1. This port appears to be from the PlayStation game, but it could be from the N64 edition, I'm not 100% sure. I never owned either back in the day, and as much as I've always loved and returned to the original Worms, I've been scratching my head trying to figure out if I have ever actually played Worms Armageddon before. The game has better controls mapped to the Evercade than Worms 1, and just using more buttons to be able to select the weapons makes life a lot easier. There are more weapons in game Worms Armageddon compared to Worms 1, and the animation is better, but essentially this is just more Worms. It's not like they are story-heavy games after all, where you'd need to regularly return to both games to get the full experience. Either will give you your Worms fix. Certainly as it is, Worms Armageddon does give you the better controls and richer gameplay experience with more weapons, etc., and the addition of missions as well as the standard battles that you get in Worms 1. Then we come to Worms Blast. This is a Worms take on a game like Bust a Move. From what I gather, this is a port of a Game Boy Advance game, or at least I hope so, because when I had it on my television to record the gameplay footage that you're seeing, it looked super blown up and the text wasn't super easy to read. This will only be an issue though if you are playing it with your Evercade connected to a TV, or I guess if you have an Evercade Versus and you've got it on your television. I've never played Worms Blast before, and whilst I was overconfident that I could jump straight in, I quickly realised that I needed to go back and do the tutorial. And yes, this was quite a tutorial. It was super long, maybe 20 or 30 levels of tutorial just to get you started and get to grips with things, which I felt probably was a sign that this was an overly complicated game compared to what it needed to be. Now, it wouldn't be as simple to pick up and play as something like Bust a Move or Dr. Mario, but the game is essentially like a Bust a Move or Dr. Mario game, etc., like Wario Woods, where you want to eliminate coloured gems by connecting the matching coloured things that you send up into the playing area. Unlike Dr. Mario, where you drop pills, or Bob and Bob in Puzzle Bobble, where you're shooting balls from the centre, this is Worms, so you fire rockets. Like Bust a Move, the coloured rockets you fire changes, and although it seems to sometimes just cycle the same colours over and over again in a predictable pattern, other times it's more randomised, or at least I think so. Where it becomes different from those other games is that you can also move your chosen worm from left to right at the bottom of the screen, like you could in Wario Woods. This allows you to dodge falling debris, and like in Wario Woods where you control Toad, controlling your character around the bottom of the screen does give you an extra bit of strategy when aiming your weapon. Just like on the other Worms games, you can control the power of your shot when you fire the bazooka to fire the rockets, but other weapons like the laser gun or shotgun always fire at full speed. The laser destroys everything in the path where you shot, and then there are times where you need to bounce shots off of rubber panels. All this adds strategy to the game, which fits into the Worms franchise as a whole, but I actually found this game to be quite hard in terms of its strategy. Like I said, the tutorial took me a while to get through, and some of the levels, even on the tutorial, seemed you need to be like overly precise and get things like perfect first go. There was one level early on in particular that I attempted it maybe like 30 times. You had 1 minute where you had to hit a target, and you would then try to obtain a laser to bounce something, and if you wasted like 1 second you probably wouldn't do it. I was about to give up when I suddenly remembered that the Evercade has a built-in save state function, and so using that I was able to then go to the tried and tested method of trial and error just until I got it and could move on with the game. Without that, I probably would have given up. Now, I see Worms Blast as a game which I'll return to here and there just to chip away at some of the levels, but it wasn't one which I finished and fully experienced for the purposes of this review, as it was just instantly too challenging. And to be honest, I was mostly here for Worms and Worms Armageddon. Now, despite my feelings about Worms Blast being too hard and not as pick up and play as other puzzle games of a similar nature, I'd still say that it's a lot of fun, and that overall the package that also has Worms and Worms Armageddon does make this one of the easiest recommendations for the Evercade. The games are addictive and control well with the D-pad rather than the traditional mouse. Worms is a perfect game to lose yourself in whilst you have a few minutes or even a few hours to spare, and fans of the series will definitely love it. If you've never really loved the Worms games, this release probably won't change anything for you, but if you do enjoy turn-based action strategy games that have got a lot of humour, then this game is definitely for you. So anyway, that brings us to the end of this review of Worms for the Evercade. I just knocked a load of stuff over, but don't worry about that, we're going to keep going. This brings us to the end of the review of Worms for the Evercade. I'd definitely say to check it out. Do make sure you check out the other videos we've got on the channel, and this is a new channel which will focus just on the gaming stuff, but do check out everything we do over on www.xstreamed.tv. Also check out the new website geekbattle.tv. Check out the Geek Battle TikTok and Geek Battle Gaming TikTok. We've got stuff everywhere. All of the links can be found at the website. Smash that subscribe button one more time, and ciao for now. Boom.